Welcome to the Law School Toolbox Podcast. Today, we're here with Law School Toolbox writer and 2L, Shirlene Armstrong, to talk about being a first-generation college and law student. Your Law School Toolbox host today is Allison Monahan, and typically I'm here with Lee Burgess. We're here to demystify the law school and early legal career experience so that you'll be the best law student and lawyer you can be. We're the co-creators of the Law School Toolbox, the Bar Exam Toolbox, and the Catapult Career Conference. I also run the Girls Guide to Law School. If you enjoy the show, please leave a review or rating on your favorite listening app. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always reach us via the contact form on lawschooltoolbox.com, and we would love to hear from you. With that, let's get started. Welcome back. Today, we're talking with Shirlene Armstrong, a 2L at Wayne State University School of Law and a writer for the Law School Toolbox. Shirlene is a first-generation college and law student, and we're thrilled to have the chance to talk with her about her experience so far in law school. So welcome, Shirlene.
Thank you, Allison.
We are excited to have you here. So first off, why don't you just give us a bit of background on your path and how it is that you ended up in law school?
Yeah, so like you said, I'm a first-generation college student and lawyer, so law student. I actually grew up in a relatively small town north of Detroit, Port Huron, Michigan. In general, like growing up, I've always had a really strong sense of ethics and right and wrong. So when someone would do something that was mean to someone else, it would never sit right with me. It would always bother me. I always tried helping people, and I always, from a young age, understood the difference between right and wrong. And then when I was in sixth grade at my my middle school, I had to do a thing called career cruising, where it's a fun little survey, essentially, where you just answer a bunch of questions about yourself and like what you would do in certain situations, and it gives you what your skills are and what kind of careers would be best suited for you. And when I was in sixth grade, all of my results were law related. So I was
I think I did that once, and they told me that I should be like a sheep farmer.
Yeah, they always have like a weird one, like a basket weaver or a circus clown. And of course I had a couple of those, but I had like judge, I think one was like a litigator. And I was like, as a sixth grader, I was like, well, what are these words mean? But,
right.
So that was,
so all of yours were kind of pointing the same direction.
Yeah. So that was just kind of the spark, I guess. And I've always loved school and I've always loved learning. I consider myself a lifetime learner. And so, in high school, I had the chance to take a couple of law classes, nothing like law school, but, just like a little taste of what it's like. And I loved it. I could never get enough. And then when I went to Grand Valley, I also, took more law classes, and that just kind of solidified my decision to go to law school. And so now I'm in law school and I'm still loving it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I've been wanting to do it for a while, but it's never really wavered. So I've always really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. And would you say this is something that your family and friends had been supportive of, even though it's a little bit outside of the scope of what they had done in their past?
Yeah, I would definitely say I'm very fortunate, and I have a great set of friends and a great family. My parents obviously both did not go to school, and we're working class, so I've known since a very young age that I needed to do well in school because I needed to go to college, and my parents have always pushed me to be successful. And so honestly, my family is a very strong point in my life, and they've always been very proud and supportive. And even my cousins and my uncles and my aunts and all of those extended family are always like, when are you going to be a lawyer? So it's really great.
That's good. And do you think it's impacted your experience so far, being kind of this pioneer, or are you just sort of rolling with it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I definitely would say that it's kind of a challenge to be a first generation college student in general, but law student, it's a whole new world. And each person, has their own experiences with it. For me, like, for example, my parents are working class and they help out as much as they can, but money has definitely always been an issue for me. I've had to work really hard, and in school, normally I would work through the school year rather than just focusing on my studies. I've worked since I was 16, but I think it's definitely taught me the value of hard work, and it's given me this higher drive. And I would like to, I've always been a very ambitious person, I have a very high drive in life, but I've done a lot of, participated in a lot of different organizations. I've taken on a lot of different opportunities because I know that if I don't take on these opportunities, I won't get them. So I need to, show that I'm willing to take that initiative and take control of my life the way that I want to. So in a sense, it's a positive and it's a negative, but there are definitely some challenges, but I would like to say that it's definitely been a strength for me.
Right. Well, I think it seems like you understand that no one's really going to hand you anything, which is actually pretty valuable in today's economy. I think, that's a message we try to get across to a lot of law students, like whatever their background.
Exactly.
Like you've definitely got to be out there hustling and making those opportunities for yourself, or they're probably not just going to fall into your lap.
Yes, I would agree 100%. It's definitely the matter of hard work, especially in the legal field too. You really have to work hard to show that you're willing to work hard. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely not a career path for the lazy.
Oh, definitely.
Whatever your background.
God, no.
All right. Well, let's talk now about some of the more practical aspects about going to law school, because you've written a lot of really great stuff on the Law School Toolbox website. We encourage people to go and read some of your posts, which we'll link to here. But first off, let's start by backing up a little bit and talking about the application process. Okay. So, do you have any general advice for people who are applying to law school, particularly for people who aren't coming from this kind of more typical law student background?
Well, just in general, know that you actually want to go to law school. It's a big...
Excellent advice.
Yes. That sounds a bit of a stupid part of advice, I guess, but not really. But like a lot of people... And not a lot, but there are some people, and I have friends, which I obviously won't name names, but they've gone to law school because they felt like they needed to. And law school is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of money. It's an investment in your future, both in time and in money. So if you're going for the wrong reasons, you're not going to enjoy the experience and you're going to get burnt out. And so definitely first, step one, make sure you want to go to law school, and it's okay if you decide that it's not your path. But know that you want to go to law school. Don't put yourself through the stress if you don't have to. But also,
and do you have any thoughts on how people can sort of figure that out? They're thinking like, well, everyone's telling me I should be a lawyer. I like to argue. How should they figure this out? I mean,
and that's kind of leading into my next thing. Know what you're getting into and know where to get help and what your resources are. For me, like I said, I've always had this kind of interest in law, but interestingly enough, I discovered the Girls Guide to Law School when I was into it, and that really helped me because, I found the advice and the support that I was kind of looking for as especially a first-generation college student, first-generation law student, having no clue what to do, what the process is. But being a lawyer, being a law student, going into the legal field is a lot different than how people perceive it. A lot of people think of like Law and Order or Legally Blonde or whatever, and they think, oh, okay, so it's just you just go to court all the time and you argue, which that's actually not what lawyers do on a daily basis for the most part. There's a lot of office work, there's a lot of paperwork, there's meeting with clients, there's calling people, it's an office job, but that doesn't mean you're never going to go to court. Some lawyers actually do and some don't, but just know that
most don't.
Yeah, exactly.
But some do.
Some do. Some like to hang out in the courts, but a lot of it is actually in the office, and a lot of people don't realize that until they actually get into it. I had a friend who once told me she had aspirations to be a lawyer, but I knew she had worked at an office at my old university, Grand Valley, and she told me she never wanted to work at an office again. And I kind of looked at her, and it's just like, well, being a lawyer is all about being in an office. And she's like, oh, I'm going to go to court all the time. And I said, okay, good for you, whatever you want to do. But definitely, do your research would be my number one suggestion on if you want to go to law school, because if you know what you're getting into, especially if you don't, you're just kind of like on the fence, it's much better to do that extra step of doing that research and then knowing, oh, okay, yeah, this is the right path, or oh, okay, like, you know what, I think I'd be better suited somewhere else. So.
No, I think that's great advice. And that's what we often tell people is like, look, you've really got to understand what you're getting into here. Because I think people do have a misperception oftentimes from TV or, reading books or whatever about what being a lawyer is about. And I think particularly for people who don't have parents, like Lee, my business partner in the Law School Toolbox, both of her parents were lawyers. So she kind of grew up in court, with her father, who was a criminal defense lawyer or a prosecutor, like basically they didn't have anywhere to take her when she was 5 or 6 years old before school. So she would go to court with him, and so she really had an understanding of like what this is like on a day-to-day basis. But someone who doesn't have that, for me, like no one in my family was lawyers. Mm-hmm. I think, off in the distant past, there was someone who was a judge or something.
Oh yeah.
In the 1800s.
Exactly.
But, it wasn't like, oh yeah, like I have an understanding of this. And frankly, I'm not really sure I did have an understanding.
And I didn't
what exactly
either.
It would be like.
To be honest, like until, I did my own research and I knew, like, because I would say I was a lay person. I thought, yeah, lawyers go to court, judges, they make decisions. Like, I know you can say that with any profession, though. You don't know the profession, you don't know the job until you've done your research, until you know or you've experienced it. But I would completely agree. I had no idea until like I actually was like, okay, what is being a lawyer like? And talking, and even just like a lot of lawyers. Well, I can't say a lot, but there are lawyers out there who will meet with young aspiring law students or even pre-law students and let them shadow them for a day and show them this is what we do every day. This isn't a show. This is what we do. So.
And is that something you actually did? Because I think that's a great idea.
I didn't actually. I did have a lot of conversation. I didn't physically go into an office and shadow someone, but I did have a lot of conversations. I do have friends who did shadow. Unfortunately for me, I had a very busy schedule between work and organizations and going to class. So most of my typical business hours were unfortunately packed. So I did not personally, but I do have friends who did. And I had numerous conversations with lawyers and judges and people who are paralegals. So it was a very helpful experience, though, to kind of get that firsthand perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's totally valid too. Mm-hmm. I always encourage people to go and do informational interviews.
Oh, definitely.
Ask people, what's your day like? What do you like? What do you not like? Talk to some ex-lawyers, not just some people who stuck with it, and really try to get that rounded perspective of like, okay, this is sort of what my life would look like. This is what my job would look like. These are the things I would need to, skills I would need to develop or whatever it is. Because sometimes, frankly, law school or being a lawyer just isn't going to be a great fit for someone based on what they like and what they're good at. And for some other reason, maybe they're doing it. And you just want to be like, you know what? Like, go be a programmer if that's what you're into. Like, that's a perfectly valid career choice. You don't have to be a lawyer.
No, and I think that a lot of people, they think lawyers and they think, oh, they make a lot of money. But there are some lawyers that I know that make like $40,000 a year or whatever, or they're like, you know, so
it's pretty typical.
Yeah, you know, and a lot of people don't understand that. They think, oh, lawyers make big money because they have all this like schooling and they have all this knowledge. But I mean, that's not always the reality. So do your research.
No. In fact, on the Girls Guide, I have a post about, with a graph, even, you know, very visual, about the bimodal nature, at least of starting salaries, where most lawyers who come out of law school, like most new lawyers, are making like around $60,000 a year. And then you have this jump at, you know, $160,000 a year, which is the big law money, but a very small percentage of people are making that. So I think you're right. People are like, oh, like lawyer, yeah, you're going to be loaded. You're probably going to have substantial debt.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're talking like $150,000 or more is not unusual. That's a lot to pay back on a starting salary of $60,000. So that's one of the things I always encourage people to, particularly if you don't have a lot of family resources to fall back on, is you've got to be realistic about the finances.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's back out of that for a second and talk a little bit more about the application process. What do you think people should think about with respect to their personal statements? For example, are there topics that are good, things to be avoided? Kind of how personal should these be? I mean, they call it a personal statement, but is it really like a place to dump all of your personal stuff? And then how can people frame life challenges that they might have faced in ways that can appeal to the admissions committees?
Yeah. So yes, personal statements are personal, but they don't want your whole life story. Definitely, I think in general, you do want to tell them about you, but you want to tell them the story of you. Don't tell them everything about you. They don't need to know every heartbreak. They don't need to know every, you know, failing paper. But you know, what you should do is you should frame it in a way to describe what is unique about you, what you're interested in, so that they remember that parts about you. So you do have a lot of freedom with the personal statement, because you know, it is a personal statement. It is about you. It is the story of your life, but it is a chance for you to introduce yourself to this law school. So you are trying to impress them. So you definitely you want to be persuasive in it. You want to show them, I can be a good law student. I can be a good lawyer. This is my first, this is how I want to be perceived. Because unfortunately they will judge you, but, that's the unfortunate part about life. But, and you can add personal touches. Like, I believe that, way back when, it wasn't even very long ago, but back in the day when I wrote my personal statement, but I think I included a story. Like, I had talked about obviously being a first generation college student, because that's always a highlight, and that's a big part of my life. So I kind of shaped that around I have a very close family. I have a close family ties. So I kind of shaped that around how my family has supported me and how that shaped me to be that hardworking person. So you definitely want a story with an edge, a persuasive paper. Just think of it as your first legal argument. But and then
I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and in addition, so challenges are just that. They're challenges. So, and no one's perfect. People have things from their past, and you could be, coming from undergraduate, you could have had a job for 20 years and now you're coming to law school. That's the cool thing about law school, is very diverse in ages and backgrounds. So, you definitely, I believe, not a full disclosure, but an appropriate amount of disclosure, because if you think they'll find out about it, they probably will. Especially, something bad, like if you had an issue at your university, like let's say you got reprimanded, but you can flip these and show, this is what I've made this mistake. Yes, this is what happened. I'm here to clear the confusion, and I'm going to tell you what I learned from this experience and how I've grown and how I've improved from it. So,
Right. And that could be a great use of the addendum as well. I think sometimes people think they have to put all this in the personal statement. It's like, no, I think the point you make about the personal statement being your first impression is a great one. Mm-hmm. Do you really want to be talking about that sophomore year arrest for drinking on campus in your personal statement? Probably not. Put that in the addendum. You say, this was a mistake. Here's how I handled it. Whatever you did to handle it, great place to put it. But, the personal statement is about you, but it's also got to make it clear, like, why you want to go to law school, why you're going to be a lawyer, why you're going to be good at this. I think that was all great advice. And
no, I'm sorry. And I was going to say, I do remember I completely forgot about the addendum part, but yes, that is your time. And they do want people to put those on there. Like they do that adds an extra personal touch. And yes, don't fully go off about, I got an MIP junior year and let me tell you about it. But, definitely frame your
but some of this, and some of this you do, the thing about the application is you need to read the questions really carefully because if you don't disclose something that you should have disclosed, this can come back to bite you when you've graduated and you're preparing to take the bar exam and they start asking questions. And then they realize you didn't disclose something you should have disclosed on your law school application. Believe it or not, they actually go look at them. Just be careful, make sure that you're being straightforward, etc.
One thing that they, that my school has done a really good job at like letting us know is that when you go to take the bar and apply for the bar, is they will do a full check on you and if you have to disclose something, they will find it out and they'll ask questions. So you can always come back to your student services. And if you miss something on your application, don't panic. You can always go back and talk to your student services. They normally have like some sort of like forms that you fill out, but it's definitely
like, oops. Okay, great. And what about the money aspects of applying? Because this can be a big issue for a lot of people. Do you have any advice on handling application fees, LSAT costs, that sort of thing?
Yes, I will say that it does cost a lot of money. And that was one thing that going back, I would have loved to know about way before I did. It does because, you have to take the LSAT, which is, the standardized test in order to get into law school. And that costs, close to $200. There is some regular fees and it kind of adds up. And by the time you're getting ready to start school, it could be upwards to $1,000, $2,000 just to apply to law school. One thing that I did find in my own personal research is that some fees, especially with the law school, the LSAC, I believe, and you can find more information on the website, but some fees can actually be waived, especially if, like, for example, you are like a first generation working class, or, you're struggling with money, whatever, you're on your own, and I believe that there's like an application you can fill out and you have to go through certain processes, but there are some fees, especially on the LSAC website, that can be waived. Some application fees, like some schools, in order to get you to apply, they will waive the application fee, but it can be very expensive. So if you can't get them waived, or if you've missed the deadline to get fees waived, or if you've paid things already and now you can't get it waived, definitely try your best to space out the cost if you can. That makes it a lot easier rather than dumping $1,000, because most people can't do that, especially, if you're coming from, first generation. And unfortunately, sometimes family can't help, but I'm sure, and I guess I can't say I'm sure, but some family, if you, instead of, getting a Christmas present, if your grandparents, your parents, whatever, could chip in on your application fee or chip in on your LSAT registration fee or something, that's always great. And then personally for me, in order to get ready for law school, I was fortunate enough to graduate a semester early from undergraduate. So I had from January till I started in August to work full time. So I worked full time and put a bunch of money away. I was living at my parents' house at the time, so that was great. So if you can, it's perfectly okay to take a gap year. A lot of people suggest taking a gap year, but definitely think about money because it is a lot and it's a lot up front. So definitely try to plan ahead.
I think that's great advice. And also, if there's a school you're really interested in applying for, I think it's totally fair to shoot them an email and say, hey, I'd love to apply. I don't really have the money for this. Is there any way you can waive the fee? And I've heard a lot of times they actually will. So, it's worth, again, advocating for yourself, hustling, and seeing what you can do because, a lot of schools would love to have applicants like Shirlene.
Yeah.
All right. So once you've hopefully gotten into some schools, what should people consider as they're deciding where to go? Like, what kind of factors do you think they should be looking at beyond just, okay, this is, a top X school?
So yes, each school is different. That's one thing you need to know. Each school has their own setup, has their own curriculum. There's general things that will overlap, but so you definitely need to research what school you want to go to. But something to consider is where do you want to practice? That's an important thing to think about because once you get into law school, unless you're intending on transferring, which I mean, personally, I don't suggest, but everyone is allowed to do whatever they want. And I have friends who do that and do fine, but that's just too overwhelming for me. But think about where you want to practice because you're going to be setting up your network wherever you're going to school. You're going to get those connections. You're going to meet a lot of people. And like, for example, for me, I go to school in Detroit. I plan on practicing in Detroit. But if I went to school, for example, at like Michigan State, which is in East Lansing, but I wanted to practice in Detroit, all of the people I've met, all of the places I've worked, were probably in East Lansing. So now I don't have those connections. So that's a definitely important consideration. And then also think about what you want in a law school. Some law schools have different programs. Some law schools, have a really good mock trial team, moot court team, law review. Some have specialties on certain types of law, certain curriculums, certain professors. And then there's also like dual degrees that you can take too. So definitely do your research and think about, kind of make yourself a list on what specifically do you want in a law school and what kind of experience do you want, and obviously go for a tour. So it's very similar to undergraduate in the fact, like, yes, you need to go take a tour. You need to go see the campus. You need to see what the school life is like in order to know what you want in a law school. But definitely also other things to think about are in longevity terms of where you want to practice, where you want to set up your network, and what is the area kind of like. So.
Mm-hmm. No, those are all great points. Sometimes people come to us and say, well, I got into school number 30, but then I got into school number 40 in the area I want to practice. Like, I should go to 30, right? And we're just sort of like, no, I don't think so. Like, you need you need to start making those connections.
Yeah, and ranking, and people, I will say that a lot of people are concerned about ranking. And which is valid because there's top tier, middle tier, lower tier, and kind of unranked, which is kind of blends into lower tier. But and those are important, and those will tell you different things about the law school. But if it's like a couple of points or whatever, but don't just go to a school because of its ranking unless it's top tier.
Right.
Like
exactly.
if you're deciding between a school that's like 80 and a school that's 70, there's not going to be much of a difference if you're going to be happier at the 80 school because that's the area you want to practice in. So yes, rankings are important, but there are other considerations that you should think about before you decide, oh yes, I'm going to go to this law school. But you can always transfer.
Yeah. You should transfer. All right. So now let's talk about school itself, because you did a really interesting series for the Law School Toolbox site last year where readers could almost walk alongside you, literally, when you were starting your first weeks of law school. So looking back, what, if anything, surprised you about the early days of law school? And is there anything you wish you'd known before you started classes?
Yeah, man, that was a trip. That was almost a year ago, so I'm kind of getting the war flashbacks. But I mean, I have always been a very dedicated student, and I've always been a hard worker. But I was very overwhelmed my first couple weeks of law school. I can remember sitting in my apartment and just going, "Why am I doing this?" But I definitely wish I could have told myself back then. Like, I wish I could tell my former self, like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot of work. It is a lot of studying. I've always studied a lot. I've always worked really hard. I've always done the work I've needed to do, but this is studying times 10. So that in general, and I no mean to scare you, because they will also scare you in your first couple of weeks that you're like, everyone's going to fail. Like, I think they said, the first, like, during orientation, look to your left, look to your right. By the end of the year, by the time you graduate, one of you won't be here. And you're just like,
do they still do that?
I'm sure they are still doing that today. And
wow.
I mean, first, the 1L year, they say, they scare you to death, and it's true. It is really true. It does get better as you go, but it is a lot of work. Law school is a lot of work, especially in your first year, because you're not only trying to learn how to be a law student, and you're not only just trying to learn how to be a future lawyer or learn the law. You're trying to learn everything, and you're kind of overloaded, and they really do front load you in the first couple of weeks. It kind of calms down a little bit, and then it increases again before finals hit. But just know that it will be okay. You need to find your balance, and you kind of need to take time for you, and you will, as you go in law school, you will figure out what the best strategy is and how to survive. I think is the appropriate term, but it definitely will overwhelm you. And if you're not overwhelmed, congratulations. Like, you are amazing. I look up to you, but
I think that would be pretty rare.
It's going to be overwhelming, but you will make through it. It is a lot of hard work, and I will tell anyone that, and I will tell anyone who is trying to apply to law school, like, it will be a lot of work. You will learn a lot. You will do a lot. You will read so many cases, but it's all for a greater purpose. And just remember that this is your first step of being a aspiring lawyer, being a doctor in training. So it's all worth it in the end, but know that you will be front loaded and overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think that sense of overwhelm and just sort of panic and what am I doing here is definitely pretty common. I mean, Lee tells a story about getting back a bad grade in her legal writing class and just sitting on the floor and, like, sobbing about, like, I can't believe I gave up my job for this. You know, I was a working professional. Like, what am I doing? That's pretty normal. Like, everyone kind of has to go through that. So yeah, you just have to kind of sit with that, be upset for a while, and then move on.
Yep.
All right. So next up, let's talk a little about how did you find your people in law school? Because I think, at least for me, having those relationships in law school, like my friends, mentors, maybe with professors, those ended up being really important. How about you?
And I would agree that finding your people and finding these relationships and mentorships are very, very important. But I do just want to disclaimer, if you don't have them initially, don't panic. It will come to you. For me, I guess, I would consider myself an extrovert, so that kind of helps in outgoing. I am told that I can come off as intimidating sometimes, so that kind of
you're a smart woman, so
that kind of balances itself out. I am an ENTJ, if you know what Myers-Briggs are. So, for me, I joined the Women's Law Caucus right away. I knew that I really enjoyed that. I would really enjoy that. I had signed up for a mentor at the beginning of the year. The student board of governors at my school for the law school. They do like a mentorship. So that was great. I had an initial mentor that I got to meet with. I got a mentor for the Women's Law Caucus who ended up being the president, and she's like a big sister to me. So for mentors, they are out there, and I can speak as a 2L, like I will help any 1L that asks for help. And
nice. You heard it here first. Yeah. Everyone go find Shirlene.
Yeah, just come find me, email me, call me, whatever you need. Call me crying. It's okay. I'll help you through it. But honestly, as for friends and study groups, there are definitely a lot of different people at law school. It's a very diverse group of people, and you will learn that because there are people coming from very different backgrounds. But you eventually, for me, it was just kind of natural, like some of the friends that I have. And the nice thing about my school and my class is we were divided into 2 different classes, and so section 1, section 2 for the day program. And my section really became kind of a family, so that was nice. We all kind of are very supportive. Some law schools are very competitive, and I'm very aware of that. But essentially, you need to.
That was more like my experience.
and from what I hear, it's very like it's like each year is different too. Like some years are very.
I think that's really true.
So and if you have a competitive school, you'll still get through it. You'll still find people, I promise you. And if you don't, congratulations. I feel you. It was great. But you will find those people who have similar interests to you and have similar studying styles. But open yourself up too. I know that law school is very scary, and one thing to just kind of put in perspective is, I'm sure you consider yourself an intelligent person, because you're in law school. That's a great accomplishment, but so is everyone around you. So everyone is actually at equal footing, and it's really amazing because you have this great group of people who have, different backgrounds, different perspectives, but are, you have a group of very intellectual people, and it's great. So you'll find people, it's just kind of like in life in general. You'll find people who you click with. There's some people who you may not, but you will find those people. And then as for professors, they have office hours. And honestly, like even if you're at a competitive school or a top tier school or anything like that, I promise you, your professors want you to come to their office hours. They want to talk to you. They want to share their experiences. Not all professors are like that. And believe me, I'm sure you will get forewarned. But they definitely want students to be successful. They want people to come to them with problems and questions about professional life, because some professors are actually still in practice, and some have been in practice for a very long time and now are being professors, but they want to share their knowledge, and they've literally been sitting in your seats. So I had this one professor who was great. She was probably one of my favorites. I'm actually taking her this coming semester for a different class, but she told us a story about her first law school exam and how she had gone in and she was getting ready and she was about to start, and then she passed out. Like she fainted. So you just have to remember that professors literally were in your spots, and most professors really do want you to be successful and really want to help you. So just kind of, participate in class. You can be a gunner, but some professors don't like that as much. Some professors give participation bonuses and some don't, but get to know them. Definitely make that connection, make that initiative, because that can lead to greater things and greater opportunities.
Yeah, there are definitely people too. So on this note, working with your professors, so pretty soon after classes started, you faced a major personal challenge where you had a death of a close family member. Do you have any tips for people who are facing that type of situation in the midst of law school? I mean, is there anything you would have done differently looking back?
So yes, unfortunately, she's my Mima. She's actually my mom's eldest sister, but I didn't have grandmothers growing up. They passed away before I was born. So she took on that role as a grandma. So it was very sudden, and it was it took it took a real big blow to me because she's probably the second most important woman in my life, second to my mother. So it definitely took a big hit. But unfortunately, life does not stop when you're in law school. Life continues to go. The bad things happen, the good things happen. So one thing is that, professors will understand. Like you said, they're human. Professors are human, believe it or not.
Believe it or not.
But so no, like I did take one day off. The day that it happened, I went to class. So that was one thing that I would have, if I would have gone back. So if I can go back in time, I would have taken that day off anyways. But I was taking Comm On and was petrified of failing, so I decided to go to class instead. But so definitely know when you need to take a break and when you need to take time for yourself, especially even if it's not a death, it could be an illness. Just know that your professors are going to understand. If you have those people in your life, you're at law school, some friends and stuff, and as long as you're not in a super competitive school, I had friends where, like, if they missed a day, I would send them my notes. If I missed a day, they would send me their notes and stuff. So, and people are willing to do that for you, especially if it's obviously a death of a family member or serious illness.
Yeah, I think even at my school, people would have given you notes if you had like a really serious problem.
And people are human, So your law school, despite being competitive or whatever, they're still human too. So definitely, just know, like, yourself, and don't push yourself too hard, because I would definitely say, looking back, I would have taken more time for myself because, it was seriously like the first couple of weeks of law school too. So that was unfortunate, but and I was petrified of I had already been scared, so I'm like, I'm gonna fail. So I would have taken more time for myself. So even if you do go through a hardship, just know that it's okay to take time off. Don't take too much time off, because unfortunately, if you miss a certain amount of classes, they can't give you a grade. But just know that if even if it's maybe like you have to take a semester off, you can always go back and start again. But just know that you have to do what's best for you.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's different. I mean, for me, like the first week of my clerkship, right after I graduated, taking the bar, literally the first weekend, my father died suddenly, like out of the blue. And, I didn't even have contact information for the judge for emergency contacts. And it's just one of these, you're like, oh my gosh, like, how is this going to play out? But, I mean, obviously, like, I dealt with it. I went back to work. Like, things were, I won't say they were fine, but, they were as fine as they could be. But I think people understand, obviously. And if you're in these type of situations, you just have to do what's best for you. And if that means you take some time off or you go back to class because you need the distraction, whatever it is, it's an okay choice.
Exactly. And just know that that's okay. Just know whatever you need to do, that's okay. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Just make sure that you know what's best for you. Don't do something because you feel like you have to. Do what you
Well, and that there are probably more important things in life than going to law school classes or, going to your new job.
But take time for your family, but it's understandable if you need that distraction. Just, you the best.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, once classes started, did you feel like you were facing any kind of special challenges because of your background, or did you feel like you were kind of a pretty typical law student?
Yes, but no, I think it's the best answer. So, I don't have any lawyers or connections or anyone to go for advice. So, in general, like, I felt kind of at a disadvantage because I do have friends who have lawyers in their family. So in my mind, I'm just like, oh, great. Like, I'm not going to get a job and I'm going to fail and everything's going to, but, so it's kind of that. But I mean, I would say that the transition from high school to undergraduate was a little bit more hard, but in general, it's like you don't have anyone that you can fall back on and be like, well, what did you do, Mom? What did you do, Dad, when you were in school? Or so I would say in general like that, but it's all about finding your own path. But I will say that, like, there are law students that do have lawyers in their family, but there are some law students who aren't first generation. They have parents who've gone to school or whatever, but they don't have any lawyers in their family either. But so everyone kind of comes from a different background, and everyone's kind of thrown in this. So it's like, yes, you do have some challenges where, you know, you have that fear of being successful, especially because it is a lot of money, and, you know, you're going out on a limb, and you don't have these connections. So there's kind of that extra added fear and anxiety. But I will say that a lot of your classmates are probably feeling similar, even if they do have those connections. But it makes it easier when you can fall back and be like, well, I think my dad's firm will hire me.
Yeah, that's always a nice one. Well, I think I'll just go work for my father. Like, oh, okay. Well, how nice for you. Well, on that note, tell us a little bit about your summer job and how you found it and how you liked the work.
Yeah. So I have a summer job. I work as a law clerk at a personal injury firm in Southfield, Michigan, which I'm sure most of you probably don't know where that is, but it's a big personal injury hub in Michigan. So I actually started working part-time there in February, and then I switched to full-time during the summer because I didn't take any classes. And then I will actually be continuing there after summer is over for again. Oh, wow. So how I got the job, I actually I was very fortunate, I think is the best way to put it. I'm a LexisNexis rep at my law school. And my LexisNexis associate, Liz, had gone to school with my now supervising attorney. And I was talking about, you know, being anxious about finding a job and for summer, and how I was interested in personal injury law, but I didn't really know, you know, what to do, where to go, blah, blah, blah. And she had just asked me about what I was interested in. And she's like, oh, well, I have a friend who had, you know, their family has a law firm and they're always really busy and they're always looking for help. Let me get you in. So
perfect.
Really, it's kind of networking. So, you know, you kind of just have to put yourself out and, you know, you never know who's going to lead you to a job. So, and I've been very fortunate. I honestly, I love my job. I love the firm I'm at. It's a smaller firm. There's about a little under 10 attorneys, I believe. And I just trained a new part-time law clerk. So he is the second law clerk.
Nice.
And we got a new paralegal today too. So we're slowly growing, but, I really love it. I fortunately, with this experience, I do a lot of pre-lit stuff. I do what a younger attorney or a summer associate would do. I handle the discovery tracking. I write complaints. I talk to clients. I meet with clients. I talk to insurance companies. But I really enjoy it. So, and that's just kind of solidified my career path, thank God. But, I really do enjoy it, and I've been very, very thankful for my experience because there is that anxiety of finding a job for summer, especially as a 1L when you're trying to still pass your classes and still find a job for summer and have some sort of job security because unfortunately that's not even a real thing anymore. So.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you are very busy during the school year when you're doing your work and doing your classes and everything else. But I'm glad that it's working out well. Well, we're almost out of time, but one article, actually we're way out of time, but one article I really liked that I want you to say something about is something hardly anyone thinks about before they start law school, which is commuting. So tell us about your commute and how you manage to make it productive or relaxing or just really how you deal with it.
Yep. So commuting is definitely a struggle. I am actually fortunate enough that I just bought a house about 15, 20 minutes from my law school. So that's a fortunate thing. So my commute is less than it was. But beforehand, I was traveling about 30 miles to and from school. So that's a good amount of time. And one thing is it's very frustrating sometimes. Sometimes you leave at your normal time and there's traffic, so you're late, and that's frustrating. And it's takes time away from studying, so that's frustrating. So my suggestion is always to kind of plan ahead and make kind of an experience of it. Personally, sometimes I would, treat myself like in the middle of the week. I'd get myself a coffee rather than brewing it at home. I would listen to audiobooks or podcasts during my drive to kind of minimize the amount of time that I'm focusing on when am I going to get there. And
Right.
and it's nice because there's a lot of obviously like there's the Law School Toolbox podcast that you can listen. But there's a lot of helpful tools and websites, especially for law students, where you can listen to things and kind of get an overview of, oh, okay, today I'm going to contract and we're going to be talking about the UCC or something like that. What do I need to know about that? And then you can go and learn a little bit more before you go and actually learn about it. But so if you are a commuter, I'm sorry, because I understand your struggle, but definitely kind of make an experience of it and try to do things that you can. I mean, personally, I know when rush hour is. If you've ever been to Detroit and had to deal with rush hour, it's not a fun experience. So try to plan ahead. So if you know that you get out of class at 5, maybe stay till 6:30 and study in the library, and then go home and eat dinner. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely not a fun element of anyone's life, but kind of inevitable for a lot of people. All right, Shirlene. So what final advice do you have for somebody who might be listening to this episode and they're considering going to law school, but nobody in their family, maybe even no one they know is a lawyer?
So overall, like I said before, it will be challenging. It will be scary at some times, and sometimes it's really frustrating. But just know that you can do it. I don't have any lawyers in my family. I don't know anyone that's a lawyer besides people who I work with now. But you can do it, and you will do it. And it's all about pushing yourself to do it. You have to You have to take those challenges. You have to get advice. You have to research. You have to do those things. You sometimes have to take the extra step. And it can be frustrating because some of your friends or some of your, classmates don't have to do that. But, that's what makes you 1 inch stronger. So, and that honestly makes you a little bit different from the rest. So, embrace the challenges, take on those opportunities, but just know that you can do it. And if you ever need anything, there are people who are willing to help you.
I think that's great advice. And with that, we are unfortunately out of time. Thank you so much, Shirlene, for joining us.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
It was really our pleasure. If you enjoyed this episode of the Law School Toolbox Podcast, please take a second to leave a review and rating on iTunes or your favorite listening app. We would really appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. Typically, our new episodes are out on Monday. If you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to reach out to Lee or Allison at lee@lawschooltoolbox.com or allison@lawschooltoolbox.com. Or you can always contact us via our website contact form at lawschooltoolbox.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.